I just came off court testing this Mizuno Wave Claw 3 badminton shoe. Indian men's singles player Prannoy used to play in the second generation, but this is the brand new third generation. It's an all-around badminton shoe on the lightweight and speedy side of things. If you're familiar with Yonex products, it's somewhere between the ultra lightweight Yonex Aries C2 and the ultra popular Yonex 65 C3. In fact, the 65 C3 is 12% heavier than this Wave Claw 3, and the Wave Claw comes in at 311 grams in my size, 28.5 centimeters or 44 in European size. Now keep in mind that Mizuno shoes are half a size smaller than Yonex and Victor, for example. So where I use a 44.5 in those two brands, I use a 44 in this brand. That's why it's often better to measure your foot in centimeters to get a better comparison across brands. I bought this shoe with my own money to give you an unbiased review, and I've had it on court for 10 hours during drills and games to see how it stacks up against other all-around badminton shoes. So when I tried this shoe on, I immediately noticed two things. The first one, it's super light. The second one, it's so soft on the inside. Whatever material they've been using feels amazing when you're putting the shoe on. I'm Aske from Beast Badminton. Let's dive into the midsole and the cushioning first. So in terms of the midsole in this Wave Claw 3, it's pretty limited. As you can imagine, with many all-around badminton shoes and even lightweight badminton shoes, the comfort underneath your foot is one of the areas that they strip away in order to keep the weight very low. And so this one is another example of that. And I find myself feeling very fatigued underneath my foot while I'm playing, sort of like halfway through the session, but also in the hours after playing. For me, as an average-sized European player, this is far too fatiguing compared to other slightly more comfortable all-around shoes like the Li-Ning or the Victor A970 Ace, or even more supportive shoes. If you have a smaller frame than I do and less kilos to strain your joints, maybe this is something you would prefer. But for me, this is far too fatiguing to play in. Next, let's look at the insole. Now, the first thing I notice is that there's no ventilation holes for breathability, and I noticed that even though the material is quite soft, it's a pretty standard looking insole. There's no wavy pattern to protect against sliding inside the shoe, and that was exactly the issue that I had. In fact, I found that when I go hard and play at the level that I normally like to play at, I found myself sliding in this shoe regularly, which was definitely not confidence inspiring. Keep that in mind if you're considering this shoe. Next, let's look at the toe box. So in terms of the toe box, I tend to look at the protection at the front, at the bottom, and even at the upper of the toe box. As you can imagine, with lightweight badminton shoes, a lot of the protection has been stripped away, which means that for me playing in this shoe, my toes get fatigued bumping against the very front of the toe box. Now my toes also get fatigued on the side of the big toe playing in the shoe because the toe box is slightly too wide or too roomy for my feet. I consider my feet average sized, but slightly on the narrower side, and so I've had issues with a lot of the top tier Yonex badminton shoes, and this Mizuno Wave Claw 3 is no exception. Next, let's look at the heel. If we look at the heel in this Wave Claw 3, let's start by zooming in on the cushion. You can see this slight sausage cushioning from one side all the way through the back heel and to the other side. And this is a common approach to blending some comfort with a locked-in fit, and we see it in many other badminton shoes too. In this one, it's less thick and slightly less cushioned, but it's not as bad as it sounds. It's sturdy without being stiff and raw, and it still has a touch of cushioning, so it feels pretty good. And the material on the inside is super soft. It feels incredible. It seems like they're taking the same approach to the fit as Yonex tends to do with their flagship badminton shoes, where they lock in the heel and then keep the front bit of the shoe slightly more loose. Next, let's look at the fit, the tongue, the upper, and the sides of this Mizuno Wave Claw 3. Now in terms of breathability, I had no issues in this Wave Claw 3, but that's also to be expected considering it's an all-around shoe that's even on the lightweight side of things. But it bothered me that the shoelaces kept feeling like they were going loose while I was playing, and that the tongue would slide down to the side every now and then. I've had it with a lot of badminton shoes, but it continues to annoy me. Now, the real issue for me was this bit right here on the non-racket foot kept biting into the side of the ankle, which left a mark on the skin near my ankle and forced me to change to a different pair of badminton shoes during several of my testing sessions. It was painful, but it only happened when I played at my preferred pace. If I play at half pace, it doesn't seem to be an issue. Now, I've never had this with any other badminton shoe before, so I figure it's not because I'm tying the shoelaces too tight. And oddly enough, it only happened on my non-racket foot. On the other hand, the material inside the shoe, not the padding, not the cushioning, but the material they put on the inside is incredibly soft. It feels amazing when you're trying them on at the store. Even when I was wearing shitty old socks, I noticed just how soft they were. When it comes to the outsole, let's first examine what it looks like because it looks crazy. It looks like some kind of riddle from Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider. I mean, what is happening here? But in all seriousness, in terms of stickiness and gluiness, I found this better than flagship, Li-Ning and Victor badminton shoes, but not quite as good as the Yonex radial blade sole grip, which is my current favorite in terms of stickiness and gluiness. Now, looking at durability, I'm not able to test these shoes until they break while also giving you a review relatively quickly. So I have a few clues that I look at to get a sense of how they're holding up compared to other badminton shoes during my tests. And so both of these clues are on the non-racket foot. And the first clue I call the lunge tear because it's a tear that we get on the non-racket foot as we're lunging and breaking. And this area is grinding against the floor. So if we zoom in first, you'll see right here that there is virtually no tear. So these look great at this point, thumbs up. Now the next clue is the outsole tear right here. And let's zoom in again, right here. And as you can see, this looks perfect too. Maybe there's a slight tear, but this is really nothing compared to other badminton shoes. Next, let's move on to the verdict. Now, in terms of the verdict, this seems to take the same approach as many Yonex flagship badminton shoes, with a more locked in back and a more loose front in terms of fit. For me, it's far too fatiguing to continue to play in, which makes me think that if you're a player with a smaller frame and fewer kilos to strain your joints than me, this might be a good fit. The most interesting thing about the Wave Claw 3 is the category that it puts itself in, the all-around with a touch of speed, which to me is somewhere in between the ultra popular Yonex 65C3 and the ultra lightweight Aries C2, also from Yonex. So if you're looking for a blend between those two, this might be interesting. Otherwise, it's pretty good all around. It's pretty good for what it's trying to do, but it's also kind of forgettable at the same time. The one thing that I keep coming back to though is just how soft it is on the inside when you're trying it on at the store. It feels incredible. If you're interested in comparisons with other shoes and ratings, check out the text review of the Mizuno Wave Claw 3. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm Asker from Beast Badminton. I'll see you in the next one.